This episode of Curiosity's Sake was made possible by the Collection Chamber at collectionchamber.blogspot.com. This site is an amazing project dedicated to restoring video games from the DOS era that are unplayable by modern means. There's already hundreds of games available on the site and they're as easy to play as a simple downloadable exe. The site's owners, Biffman101 and Hero of Avalon, have been working hard to bring us some of the best games of our childhood, making them playable for free, and I'd highly recommend that viewers check out this blog site as I'm sure that he has something that'll pique your interest. So, if you're old enough to remember a time where dinosaurs actually roamed around the earth, you probably remember Disney's Dinosaurs from 2000.
This movie occasionally gets wrongly labelled as a Pixar movie, but it definitely wasn't. It's kind of like Bolt on that front, where it was a 3D animated Disney movie made by their in-house studios.
I don't exactly have a vivid memory of the movie because I was about 5 when I went to see it, but if I really think about it, some vivid images and scenes pop into my head.
It's a decently made thing, which obviously shows a few crow's feet given that it was made 22 years ago at a time where computer animation was practically in its infancy. However, rewatching clips of it again, I have to admit that it looks a lot more impressive than I was expecting it to. It's an Exodus movie in which a group of dinosaurs and lemurs travel across the land to find some sort of oasis after their home gets obliterated by meteors. One thing that I kind of appreciate about this movie, retrospectively, is how the main character is an Iguanodon, which is a dinosaur so rarely used in movies and cartoons that I legitimately thought it was made up for this movie back when I was a kid. The evil carnivorous dinosaurs are also more obscure dinosaurs, the Carnotaurus, which a lot of kids at the time thought were just T-Rexes given a slightly sexier design for this movie, but obviously, yeah, we were quite wrong. One thing that a lot of people wonder is how is it that the carnivores can't communicate with the herbivores? Like the herbivores can all seemingly communicate with each other. Like the herbs just have a universal language, the vegan language, but the dino chompers don't seem to have any reasoning ability at all. Or maybe they do with each other, but not with the herbs. I don't know. Anyway, this movie came out around the time that Disney made a series of activity games on every IP that they owned. So, obviously they go for this one since it was a brand new movie and they just really wanted to put it out there. And I ended up with a copy of it as a kid. I think it was more because I liked dinosaurs at the time than me liking this movie. Or maybe it was just on offer, I don't know. This series is very similar to the Bugs Life pack, but they have a number of different mini-games and puzzles as well as a different overall aesthetic depending on the IP used. For example, the Lion King one is also quite different for obvious reasons. The Bugs Life one was my favourite of them since it actually had a story and the animation was quite impressive for the time, whereas this one and the Lion King games weren't exactly bad, but they never quite hit the sweet spot that the Bugs Life game did. The first thing that I find funny with this game is the cover, which depicts the main character Aladar trying to reach out and kill you. The rest of the box is taken up by lemurs and a few random gallimimuses who weren't really characters in the movie, but whatever. Anyway, enough bullshit, let's talk about the game. So the game starts off like all classics do, up a dinosaur's ass.
I spy with my little eye.
Hold on, what's that?
What?
That!
Oh, I don't know.
Looks more like a snack than a meal.
It's too puny to be a dinosaur.
And it's not furry enough to be a hairball. Welcome, stranger.
We're about to go have some fun. Come on!
One thing that you might notice if you've played any of the Jak and Daxter games is that the main lemur is voiced by Max Casella, who is the iconic voice of Daxter from those games.
Quite the money collectors, eh? Here's a gun upgrade. Now get out! I need my beauty nap.
Trust me, brother. There aren't enough hours in the day.
And he has the exact same vocals as well. The voice cast mostly reprise their role in this, though the character list has been reduced to 4 characters and a narrator. DB Sweeney is Aladar again, Tress McNeil is Baleen, and Ema is voiced by Billy West. Corey Burton is the narrator in this thing, whose voice you might recognise if you've watched anything animated. Like ever. He has credits in almost every animated series from Animaniacs to Disney's Atlantis and Hercules. If you watched a cartoon in like 40 years, you've heard his voice. So after pulling yourself out the dinosaur's ass, Daxter and the Bluesaurus debate as to whether or not you're food or too pathetic to be food. We then get to see what the characters look like in this, and I have to admit, they look pretty good. I personally felt that the Bugs Life game looks a lot better, since I feel that this one cuts a few corners with its backgrounds, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Aladar's head is animated on what is basically a JPEG for his body, but I'm not able to fully prove that. It just feels like his body is a lot less animated than his head, but it's almost as good as the movie, admittedly. We then get invited to write our names on an egg. With sign-in system, what if the egg hatches and a tiny dinosaur comes out of your ID? What do you do then? So after entering my name, we're taken to the main menu. Now, my first sort of issue with the game is that the menu system, it's perfectly fine, but I preferred it in Bugs Life where it was like you were going on an adventure, giving you a real feel that you were part of the Bugs Life movie experience. Whereas here, you just sort of access all of these areas at once. Whereas in the movie, there's like a sort of odyssey going on, so the areas which are all green are like the very end of the movie where they find it, it's like their reward. But in this game, you can just go there straight away, which is a bit weird. There are 5 puzzle games, each based roughly on a scene from the movie, and most of them are quite awesomely named. Styracosaurus Spelunker, Liner Dino Puzzle Maker, Colossal Fossil Face-Off, Iguanodon Pondathon, and Lemur Lovematch. I thought I'd start off with the one that I like the least to get it out of the way, which is the Lemur Lovematch. It's a very basic bitch matching game where you just click flowers as they pop up and try to find the matching flower. Admittedly, they do add some Corey Burton narration to make it feel like a dating game TV show or something along those lines.
Zach says he is comfortable with his place in the social order. Currently treeless, he hopes to join up with the lemur troop this year. Sylvia is known far and wide for her impressive work with a tooth comb. Have a wild time.
But besides that fun bit of flavouring, it's just matching flowers, which is always fun.
Bob counts his front-facing eyes among his most attractive features. Ella enjoys monkey see, monkey do, and recently learned how to use her grooming claw. Have a great...
I think one thing that I'm not a big fan of is the lemurs in general as a thing, like in this movie. I always felt like they existed as an excuse to sell cuddly toys, even as a little kid, and I never really felt like they belonged in the movie. I get that Daxter in the movie is Aladar's vocal partner, but he could have been a number of animals or the only one of his kind, and it wouldn't have made an amazing amount of difference. They also kind of try to do the Tarzan thing with Aladar, but it doesn't really pay off in the movie, or at least not as much as it does in Tarzan. The flowers are also kind of jarring since they're a 2D design and everything else in the game is 3D. Right, I've had enough of encouraging fornication. It's time to do something manly before I grow a vagina. The next game is Iguanodon Pondathon, which as a name is very misleading as the entire scene is just based on a scene where dinosaurs make water sources by stomping in the mud. It's not really a pond if your foot barely fits in it, guys. So this is one of the 2-player games that you can play in this, or you can play against a computer who is Crone from the movie. Crone is quite a big character in the movie, but he has no presence in this game, which I find kind of odd. Like, this is the most we'll see of him, so Crone fans, suck it up whilst it lasts. So you have to create boxes by walking from dot to dot. I find it a bit funny that the difficulty dictates that it's easier to have less dots and therefore less of a chance to make boxes. I actually find the reverse to be true. The less dots you have to work with, the more of a chance you have of walking over your own path again and destroying all of your own boxes. In the earlier stages, I just sort of make my boxes and then just sit in the corner waiting for the timer to run out. So basically you have to walk to 4 points and then make a square. If you have most of the lines in the square, you win the point. Otherwise you just help the other guy. Good work, jackass. The one with the most points at the end wins. I know, it's a very novel concept. As established, going back over your own lines erases them. So you have to be very careful not to do that, but sometimes it's literally impossible not to. It's a decently made game with some nice relaxing music, but it's not the apex of fun, and it gets old very fast. I also don't think that its colour scheme helps much, it's just this depressing brown, which makes it feel like a late 2000s shooter or something. Next up is Styracosaurus spelunker. Try saying that after a few shots. It opens up with an angry Carnotaurus yelling in the background and everyone just sort of shimmying inside a cave to get away from him. This is based on a scene in the movie where they end up getting trapped in a cave, but find that it's actually got a breakable wall at the back, which leads them to where they need to go. This game is a breakout clone which involves smashing rocks against other rocks. It's quite serviceable, but it doesn't have any photos of murder victims as part of the level, so it's not the best breakout clone I've seen. So after you inevitably get bored and press quit because 2 minutes have passed and this isn't the 1980s anymore, you unlock the scene where they break down the wall and find the promised land. Albeit this is like a reanimated version for the game, it's not the one from the movie.
New home.
And it comes with a pool.
So next up is Line a Dino Puzzle Maker, which is the best fucking minigame in this thing. The Jigsaw puzzle game. Why, you might ask? Well, don't worry, I'm not 80 all of a sudden. We're about to play God and make our own dinosaurs. So you select a background and select a dinobot for your abomination. I do wish that you had more than 3 bodies to work with. There is a lot more focus on selection for the heads and the legs. But it would be nice if you could have raptor or gallimimus-like bodies for your abomosaurus. Next, you pick your heads for your abomination. I love this chicken-looking head, so it's the one I've often gone for. You can have a T-Rex body with a Triceratops-looking head, and there are a lot of creative options, but not enough for my liking. I've never found a good Dino Factory game, but I think there's some real potential in the idea, and it'd suck if nobody ever did it and nobody realised that potential. On top of the hilarious abominations that you can come up with, you can come up with some cool shit to improve on nature like a real mad scientist. You can then create the dinosaurs raw. So you either have the option of using a number of stock raws that the game provides, which apparently Daxter recorded himself.
Now it's time to make some noise. We're gonna make a roar for the dinosaur you just made. Here are a whole bunch of dino sounds that I've collected on your behalf.
Which is kind of weird. You can also use your own voice, but sadly this is not an option to us because I'm on a virtual machine and I'm fairly sure that this causes a number of complications with my microphone and related settings. Still, the default roars and moans are very good, so I'm happy with them. Finally, you get to pick 3 random words and Corey Burton will personally narrate your OC's backstory for you. Yes, any image that you pick will work for the backstory, though it's completely random and some combinations and words flow better than others, and even then it's just sort of a crapshoot as to whether or not it'll make sense at all. Also, in your face Jurassic World guys, I made a better custom dinosaur than you. It wasn't hard, I just had a tiny bit more imagination than any of you chumps.
The Schmoozosaurus would work the herd at all the prehistoric gatherings. It liked to exchange a puddle with the other dinosaurs. Showing off nose hair made the Schmoozosaurus a sought-after guest, not to mention its ability to juggle cream of broccoli soup.
Choose another puzzle.
It was easy to spot the I Can See the Saurus. Just wander down to any watering hole and you'll find a tippy canoe catching his eye. Occasionally, the I Can See the Saurus would stare down. A noisy mockingbird, but never shaving cream. Always sporting a winning smile, the Toothodontus had plenty of bite. It loved sinking its teeth into a mustache. On hot days, it would use an armpit to prevent a rubber ducky from sitting on its tail.
You fucking cunt!
The final game is Colossal Fossil Face-Off, which is a bitchin' name for a bitchin' game. Now, at first glance, this looks like chess. Maybe a simplified version, but it does look like chess. But it's not chess at all. The front guys are kind of like pawns, but they can move forward and back more or less from one side of the board to the other, which is like the complete opposite of chess where they can only move one square at a time. They can also move side to side, so these guys are more like rooks than pawns. It's the rest of the pieces that move one square at a time in one direction. It makes them kinda lame, to be honest, and it means that you can't move most of your guys at the back until late game. The idea is that the bigger dinosaurs are meant to overpower the smaller ones on the enemy's team, like the T-Rex overpowers the Ankylosaurus that thinks it's a dog for some reason. However, when it comes to things like the Styracosaurus, I can't fucking tell you who they overpower or who they get their asses kicked by. I made a few stupid moves over the course of the game because I genuinely didn't know the pecking order of the pieces, since it's not really that obvious in some cases, especially when it comes to the herbivores. The Ankylosaurus dudes and the pterodactyls are kinda worthless as pieces, because the best you can hope for is a draw, should it go against one of its own kind. You can add a little bit of spice to a piece by giving it a comet or a rock shield, both of which are like power-ups that which repel attacks or help you overpower an enemy that would normally be stronger. However, they don't work in every situation, and I have to admit, I wasn't always able to tell what situations they worked in and which ones they didn't, or how to use them effectively. One piece on the board has to guard the egg, making it the king piece basically. It can't move, which really does make it stick out like a sore thumb. If everything else has moved and your egg guardian is the only doofus left standing, it's kind of obvious who it is. It's kind of hard for me to say who to give it to. The big cheese piece, be it the Brachiosaurus or the Carnotaurus, has no piece that can rival it, so it can't be taken without a comet or a rock shield. But the issue is that your most powerful piece is out of play. Meanwhile, if you give it to one of the bozos at the back, it becomes very obvious very quickly. In fact, the opponent usually gives it to one of the guys in the top left-hand corner from my experience. Like 8 or 9 out of 10 times, that's probably where it's going to be. I know I've done a great job selling this minigame, but to tell the truth, this is my favourite one in the pack, since it has some strategy, some fun animations, and it feels like there are some real stakes to this one. It also feels a bit more like a real game. This is also one of 2 games where you can control dinosaurs, and it's the only one where you can control multiple dinosaurs and have them fight, which is kind of what most people want when they look for dinosaur media. This is also 2-player as well, which is pretty cool, because this is the one I'd want to play against a friend in. The commentary from Daxter is kind of a nice addition, but I can imagine a lot of players finding his voice grating pretty damn quickly. I kind of grew up with it, so I'm not one of those people, like I'm completely used to this voice, but I can imagine some people really getting annoyed by it. I know some people who played the Jak and Daxter series who can't stand it, so I don't know how some people will react. One thing I always wondered about this game was the egg that you have to get. You have to protect an Iguanodon egg from the baddies, but you also have to steal one from them as well. Where did they get this from, and why didn't they just eat it? Also, what were they going to do with the egg? It wouldn't even be the pterodactyl. Were they going to adopt it and raise it like Dinosaur Adventure? Were they going to science it up as a meat eater, or just raise it and fatten it up and then eat it? Regardless of what they do, they're not going to be able to share it amongst an entire group of them. I mean, look how many there are. They can't all eat one Iguanodon, there's not enough.
You did it! You found the egg! Way to go!
Now it's time to introduce yourself. If you see your name on an egg already, just click on it. If you don't, use the keyboard to type in your name and where you live. When you're done, click on Earl. Welcome! Let's start the adventure.
I'm sorry, you say your name is...
Stew Dog.
Because you look a lot...
No, I get that all the time. Just ask those Ant Island bozos. I'm definitely Stew Dog.
You mean those ants off their tits on crack?
Yes, and they're welcome for that.
I will love to bash your fucking face right
we
the
should
fucking
keep moving.
because you're
Let's hide
a
out in this
fucking
cave.
lowlife,
It's dark, but at least it's
cocksucking
dry.
motherfucking
I like
piece of
dry.
shit.
It's the
You're a
dark part I'm having
scumbag.
trouble
You
with.
deserve death. You're a fucking cunt.
Welche Markierung ich habe abbrechen.